All right, we were talking about metamorphic rocks. Metamorphic means to change shape, usually due to heat or pressure. They could be stretched, in which case rock layers could snap. Sometimes you have a rock layer like this and a rock layer like this, and they kind of snap, and this one slides down. We'll talk more about faulting and stuff in another chapter, but so they could slip like that. Layers could slip. They could be crunched together and make this. If they're hot enough and there's enough pressure on them, then they can make nice smooth, but otherwise they may kind of crack off and come off at different layers like that. Okay, so various things can happen depending on the amount of heat and the amount of pressure and so forth. If this happens on a large enough scale, this could cause mountains and valleys. In some places, this is what is caused. Other cases, it may cause some parts of the earth to be pushed up to the point that they make large mountains and so forth. So a lot of the metamorphic changes can cause some of our changes in topography. Some are due by volcanic and stuff that builds mountains. Some are caused by this metamorphic type thing that builds mountains and make some of the mountain ranges and valleys and stuff that we see in more rougher areas. All right. Now, when we look at metamorphic rocks in general, there are two basic types that we want to talk about. Basically, you have rocks that are called foliated. Sorry, grab the right ones here. And we have those that are called unfoliated. All right, in foliated rocks, basic foliated metamorphic rocks, the resulting rocks have layers. And you can kind of see on some of these over here, there's some layers that kind of run through the rocks here. There's some thin layers there, and so forth. Okay, and a lot of this depends on the rocks you began with. If they, for example, were shale, which are kind of like mudstone almost, or silt, very fine scaled, when they get pushed together, they will have layers, but they will be formed slate. Okay, now this is relatively low heat and low pressure, and so it doesn't do a lot of recrystallization and so forth, and we get these very hard compressed rock though, and slate is what they used to use for blackboards and so forth, because now it is so hard and compressed, so it made very good surface and very flat, and being in layers, it could split along layers, and they could make blackboards from that material. All right, mica is another one. We said this is the mica is the one that has sheets or layers of clear layers that could be. When it's heated up, it will turn into schist. Okay, which there's various kinds of schist depending what kind of mica it was, but you can still see kind of a layer formation in the schist, and it will also have some sparkly stuff, which is what a lot of rocks that sparkle is because of mica chips in it. And then last one is gneiss. Okay, G-N-E-I-S-S, gneiss, which is kind of like new. You don't pronounce the G, G-N-U, just the news. But anyhow, this is a nice rocks. Look very nice. Okay, but they, you can see here, you got some light, dark, plating materials. So this generally tends to be both of these are mica to go schist and gneiss are generally at high pressures and higher heat. Okay, so depending on the type of rock it forms, a lot of that depends on what you started with over here, and it also depends on how much heat and pressure you put it under, what it turns into there. Okay, so you generally have some dark layers and light layers in gneiss. Okay, unfoliated, on the other hand, unfoliated then is going to have no real layers visible. Okay, so it doesn't have platy minerals that like to make plates, okay, or layers, and so there's not going to be much in the way of layers or very little. All right, for example, limestone, when you put it under pressure, becomes a harder rock, although it's not real hard, but that is marble, and marble, of course, is very well used for statues and things like that, columns and so forth. And but it crystallizes, forms crystals, so it's more crystal formation, whereas limestone is more powdery looking. But it doesn't really make layers and stuff like that, but it makes very good material for making, like I said, statues and so forth. Sandstone is under heat and pressure. Instead of grains of sand, they actually form larger crystals, and so it's called quartzite, which if it makes sense because quartz is the main ingredient in most sign, and so it's formed into a little more crystally rock, which is quartzite. Okay, and that would be another metamorphic rock. But once again, it just has larger crystals in it. It doesn't really have plates or layers to it at all. To tie it all together, we like to look at what we call the rock cycle. There's kind of a cycle over time. If all we had were sedimentary processes going on, eventually everything would be eroded down until it's all flat. There would be no highs and lows. Things like metamorphic, which puts pressure and pushes rocks up into the air, creates mountains. Magma, lava coming out in volcanoes and so forth, create mountain ranges and so forth like this. And so there's a constant competition between these different parts. Sedimentary wears it down, flattens it out. Metamorphic and igneous tend to have uprisings, if you will, and they bring up mountains and valleys and give us the variety that we have in our terrain. So it's kind of this ongoing thing. It's not like there's a starting point or an ending point. It just kind of keeps going. But if we were to start with molten rock underground, that's magma. Okay, as it cools and solidifies and forms crystals, it can make different types of igneous or fire-formed rocks. Okay, and usually a lot of times they build up, make big volcanoes or so forth. Sometimes they flatten out and make just like plateaus or flat areas of lava that flow out to the side. Okay, but once it forms, and it can weather. Okay, if it gets weathered, broken down, deposited, it turns into sediments. If those sediments get cemented and compacted, then you have a sedimentary rock. Okay, but it's possible that an igneous rock could be exposed to heat and pressure, and if it, especially if it's still underground, and if it were exposed to heat and pressure, it could change into another type of rock, even down inside the earth, never having been exposed to the surface. Okay, and turn into a metamorphic rock. If it were to weather, then it could go back to sediments. Those sediments can make a sedimentary rock. If sedimentary rocks are heated in pressure, they could go into metamorphic rocks. And so there's kind of an endless combinations. And all our rocks and rock materials in our earth have constantly been moving around in this at different times. And just like we talk about the atoms, say, in water, that water has been around for years and years and years. It's maybe been part of a dinosaur at one time, blah, blah. Well, the same thing's true of these different rock layers. Okay, what you may see as dirt, sweeping up off the floor of your kitchen may at one time have been a sedimentary rock, or it might have been a metamorphic rock that broke down and weathered into little pieces, or an igneous rock, and it's been cycled through over the years, okay, and through all these different things. All right. Couple words. Notice lithification, that's that cementation and compaction we talked about. We prefer to use that word rather than lithification, but lithification just basically means kind of rock and become a rock or harden. Metamorphism is just the fact of changing under heat and pressure to become a metamorphic rock. Okay, weathering, deposition, and transportation would be like the erosion we talked about, which makes it a sediment, which then has to be cemented and compacted in order to become a sedimentary rock. Okay, but you can see how they just constantly, and from any part of one type of rock, can be changed into one of the other types of rock if it's exposed to it. Okay, there's not like a one way that they can go through the cycle. They can go a lot of different paths. And that's about it for rocks. Make this one short and sweet since it is the 5th video. And that's it for chapter 25, rocks and minerals.